Real estate is one of the simplest ways to build long-term wealth, and one of the easiest ways to get wrecked if you don't know what you're doing. So this show, it exists for one main reason: clarity. Me and Keith, we're talking deals, markets, financing, flips, all of it, but always through the lens of what's working, what isn't working, and why. I'm your host, Dayton Lindsey, and I promise you that this podcast is going to help you save time, money, and you from painful lessons. So, let's get into this. Keith, welcome back to the First Deal podcast. How have you been?
I'm amazing. Better all the time.
Better all the time? That's what I like to hear, man. All right. So, I'm going to kick it off with question number 1 that we have for the podcast. What are the 5 numbers you need to analyze for a rental property quickly? Did that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
The 5 numbers
to quickly analyze a rental.
So, of course, you need to know what your rent is. How much can I rent it for? If you are going to get a loan on it, you're going to need to know, well, what is it appraised for? Like, that's not necessarily ARV. Let's just call it value. Maybe it's in, beautiful condition and it's in full ARV condition. But for the sake of this, let's just call it value. You're definitely going to need to know the value. You need to know what it's going to rent for. Dude, and if you wanted to, we could keep this super, super simple with just saying whatever you rent it for times 0.65 minus your debt service equals net cash flow. That's a little bit convoluted, but that's actually a really good, like, down and dirty way to analyze a rental property. And then you just need to make sure that your loan to value is less than 80% and even 75%, I would say, for you to get qualified for a loan. And that's it. I mean, appraisal value, what are you purchasing it for? Oh, and then if you're going to use a DSCR purchasing product, not a cash out refinance, but a purchasing product, then you're probably, so there's 2 different types of loans for DSCR. You're either going to use a DSCR like straight away and you're going to use it to purchase the house, or some people will choose to take it down with hard money, especially if they're like in terrible condition. You have to like renovate it. You have to put $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 into the renovation. You can't get a DSCR loan on things like that. That's not what that product is meant for.
Okay.
So
what does
then you end up,
DSCR stand for?
DSCR stands for Debt Service Coverage Ratio Loan. So in short, what this means is, are you bringing in enough money to pay the bank? So if you're renting it for $2,000 and your debt service is $1,000, then you have a debt service coverage ratio of 2 because you're bringing in twice as much. And so what they want to see is 1.2. That's kind of like the perfect score. If you're greater than 1.2, you're like just killing it. But they want to see 1.2. So if you were renting it, if your debt service was going to be $1,000, they would want to see that you're renting it for at least $1,200. Now, this isn't good business practice, right? Because that's leaving only $200 for vacancy, management, maintenance, capital expenditures. Like, this is totally irresponsible. You're
turning basically out to lunch on that.
Yeah, you're losing money. After you take, like, God forbid anything goes wrong in the next 10 years, you do not have enough money stowed away to take care of it. And so what I do is I take the rent and then times 0.65 equals what am I actually using from the rent minus debt service equals net cash flow. So let's use real numbers here. If we're renting it for $2,000, we're going to take 2,000 times 0.65 equals $1,300. and let's say my my loan is $1,000, then my true net cash flow is $300, because I'm going to be keeping 10% of the 2,000, which is $200. I'm setting aside $200 for vacancy, and then I'm setting aside 10% of 2,000, which is, well, really, it's not even technically. We're going to get into the weeds just a little bit, but if you're renting it for $2,000, I take 10% off of that. So my effective gross rent is going to be $1,800 per month. And then I'm taking 10% of that, which is $180. We're getting into like the minutia of like, who cares about $20? But really, that is truly how I do it, is what is gross rent after vacancy? In this exact scenario, it would be $1,800. And then we're going to take 10% of that, which is $180. We're going to set aside $180 for management. We're going to set aside $180 for maintenance and repairs. And we're going to set aside $90 for capital expenditure. So this is any improvements. You know, you're going to buy a new washer and dryer. You're going to buy a new dishwasher. You're going to buy a new, you're going to put in a new sink with a faucet and a new fridge or whatever. So at that point, we have, let me bring up my calculator, 1,800 minus 180 minus 180 minus 90 equals 1,350. So see how I was only $50 off?
Yeah.
Earlier I had said $1,300. So I'm at 1,350. And then if I'm subtracting my debt service, and my debt service is $1,000, then we're cash flowing $350, which is exceptional, by the way. You're crushing it with that $350.
Okay, so what's kind of like the average cash flow then that at least you see for many types of rentals out there? Let's start with, say, a duplex, because I'm assuming that's what most people are going to be kind of looking for their first rental property, or kind of what they're trying to get into.
I mean, that would be nice. I would love it if people could get into duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes for their first rental property. But most of the time, the vast majority, 90+%, it's going to be single family houses. And that's just because there's thousands of times more single family houses than there is duplexes. If you were to sum up duplexes plus all the triplexes plus all the quadplexes, which is the limit of residential property, anything that's 5 units or above is now considered like multifamily. Now we're getting into the commercial aspect of this. But residential single family is 1 to 4 units. Most of the time, there's going to be, everybody is going to have, if I had 1,000 people on a call and I were to ask, and they're all landlords, and I were to ask, your first deal, was it single family or was it a duplex, triplex, or a quadplex? We would probably have single digits of people who had duplex, single digits who had triplex, single digits who had quadplexes. So just because, at least here in the States, right? I realize that you're in Canada, but we don't have that many. There's a lot of single families though. So to answer your question though, like what are the numbers that I consistently see? I'm gonna be real with you. The numbers that I consistently see are negative. People aren't even cash flowing.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you think the cause of that is?
Well, because they're not setting aside any money. So on paper, it cash flows. It would be equivalent to that $1,200. Like, let's actually run this. $1,200 is the rent, and their debt service is $1,000. I see this happen all the time, where there's $200 or $300 or $400, maybe as much as $600. Honestly, $600 is a fairly good when we're looking at gross here. Now, that's not. Once we do the math, you're going to see, let's go ahead and run 1,600 rather than 1,200. Even at 1,600, you're going to see that it's not a deal. When we actually break it down. So $1,600, let's do actual math as if we were analyzing this deal. Fair market rent is $1,600. We're going to take 10% from that for vacancy. So that's $160. Our gross rent after vacancy is $1,440, so $1,440. We're going to take 10% off for management, so $144, 10% for maintenance, 5% for CapEx. So let me bring up an actual calculator. 1,600 minus 160 minus 144 minus 144 minus 72 equals, that's $1,080. Now, take out property taxes. Take out insurance. I mean, just with property taxes alone, you're no longer, you have to pay your property taxes. You have to pay for your insurance. If you're in an HOA, you have to pay for the HOA. If you have signed a lease agreement that says that you as the landlord are going to take care of the lawn, for example, and that's $60 per month, then you're in charge of the lawn maintenance. You have to pay that. Okay. So what ends up going away is your buffer, is your contingency. Your CapEx is typically the first thing that I see go away. After that, it's going to be maintenance and repairs is the next thing that I see go away. The next thing is the vacancy that goes away, leaving just the property management. So in that order, people just poof this roughly 35%, 32, whatever, percent of their contingency goes away, which is absolutely true.
Yeah, no kidding. Kind of making it sound scary to get into investing, actually.
Do it properly, and it's a huge blessing. Do it poorly, and you end up in the gutter.
Yep. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help the people do it right.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're here for. I'm just here to ask you questions.
So
that's what I'm here for.
The good number to remember is just if you were to take 60, what it really comes down to, because you're taking a percentage of a percentage, is it's 32.5%. So if you can just remember 33%, right, which is 1/3, 2/3, you're going to take 1/3 and you're going to set that aside. Then you're going to take your PITI, right, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. What does my debt service look like? That is going to lead the only other occurrences that are going to come up is if your house is in an HOA, you're going to have to pay that. If you've agreed to take care of utilities or lawn care or anything like that in your lease agreement, you're going to need to take care of that. Other than that, there are no expenses. So take your rent times 0.66 equals how much you're actually going to be collecting after you've saved some money, minus your debt service, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is taken care of. Most people aren't having an HOA. Most people don't agree to pay for their utilities or their lawn care or anything like that. That is your net cash flow. And as long as that net cash flow is positive, I'll do the deal. I don't care if it's $20. I'll do the deal.
Really? You wouldn't care if it was $20? That's interesting.
That's not true. It does depend on how much equity I have, and it does depend on how much am I into the deal. Like if my down payment, if I'm burying $60,000 and I've just maxed out this loan, I'm at 80% loan to value, there's $20,000 of equity. No, I'm not cool with $20 of cash flow. However, if I've bought this house, if I'm all in at 60, it's worth, so I'm going over a deal that I actually have right now. I'm all in at 60 and it's worth 120 and I only pull out 70. So I owe 70 and it's worth 120. I have $50,000 of equity there. And I'm in it for 60, but I pulled out 70. That means I took $10,000 of debt. It feels like profit because it's money in my bank account that I can go use or whatever. But truthfully, it's debt. The blessing is that there's no taxes on that $10,000. 100% tax-free. The curse is that it's debt. It's not really profit. I'm really borrowing against future profits. So I put $10K in my pocket. I have $50,000 of equity, and my loan to value is 70 over 120. I'm at 58% loan to value. Would I take a cash flow of $20 on that? The answer is yes, because I'm going to be able to ride the appreciation of that house as the value goes up. That's going to create equity. That's going to create spread between what is my UPB, my unpaid principal balance on that mortgage is going to go down, 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 down as the renter pays down my mortgage, and the
Okay.
property value goes up, 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 up. It's going to be, 120 this year, and the next year it's going to be 125, and the year after that it's going to be 132, and the year after that it's going to be 140. While this unpaid principal balance on the loan goes down, down, down. So this is the equity, right? I like that because I'm already starting off with $50,000 of equity. Next year it'll be $60,000 of equity. The year after that it'll be $75,000 of equity, so on and so forth. So I like the appreciation, but I also like the depreciation on my taxes, which means I'm reporting to the government, Uncle Sam, the IRS, hey, I put in money for this, I put in money for this, I put in money for this. It's a paper loss. Therefore, it lowers my taxable liability. I'm kind of talking in big words, but what this means is you pay less to the IRS. Your property is worth more. I'm collecting money. I put $10,000 in my bank account. Now I have $50,000 for later on, and I pay less in taxes. Sign me up. I don't care. I'm not doing it for the $20 per month. I'm doing it for the other benefits.
Got it.
Man, but to answer your question, hold on. You need to know what the rent is. You need to know what the value is. You need to know how much your loan is going to be. You need to know the down payment of that loan. And you need to know what your total operating expenses are. If you know those 5 things, you can now reverse engineer into everything that you want. You can now come up with your NOI, which is your net operating income. You can come up with your LTV, which is your loan to value. You can come up with your DSCR ratio. You can come up with your cap rate, so on and so forth, right? All of those numbers, which are measurements to see how good the deal is, all of those numbers are going to come from what's it worth? How much am I into it? What is the loan? How much does it rent for? What are my total operating expenses? Those are the magic 5. I've never thought about it that way, but those are the 5 that you need to know.
Nice. Actually, that's extremely important. So on the topic of rent, going back to it, how do you estimate rent accurately? I'm assuming it's a combination of looking at different price ranges within the market, or is it just what to make the deal cash flow within reason?
No, definitely don't do that. You always want to maximize your profitability. I mean, I'm not trying to be greedy, but we are trying to make money. So if you only need to rent, so for example, this house, these numbers that we were just looking at.
Yeah.
Really what I'd like to see is like a $1,800 minimum rent for if I know that my PITI is going to be $1,000 and we need to be setting aside 1/3 of whatever I'm collecting to be put aside, to be saved up for vacancy and management and repairs and capital expenditures. Then, and we of course want to make a couple $100 per month. So that's kind of how I'm getting to the $1,800. So we only need it to be $1,800. But what if I looked at rental comps and it showed that rents, easily support $1,950, if not even $2,000?
Yeah.
Oh, smokes. Of course I'm going to do that one. So the answer to your question, I personally use Rentometer. I don't use Zillow's rental estimate. It's absolute trash. Please, anybody who's listening to this, don't do that.
Don't do it. Don't do
Rentometer, I think, is like $25 a month. Totally worth it if you're pulling. And they give you, I believe, if you don't pay for their premium, you get 5 rental analyses. I don't know how to say it, per month.
Okay.
So the hack, I didn't tell you to do this, but the hack is to create multiple Gmails. Gmails are free, and then you can have 4 different versions, 4 different, emails of Rentometer. Hey, guess what? Now you have 20 that you can pull each month, and you don't have to pay the $25 per month if you're really in a bind. There's real ways to do this.
That's a life hack, actually. Life hack, and that's kind of like basically pirating movies, if I'm honest. It's kind of like same concept. I don't want to pay for it. Let me just pirate it. We do
Well,
not condone
it's
pirating. Let me just be
it's
clear.
ethical pirating since Gmail is free and they're giving you 5 per Gmail account. And the only reason why I know this is because I actually do have a lot of different emails. And so, for example, I was in Canva earlier today, and I have 4
Oh,
different Canva accounts. Why, I don't really know, but I do have to log in and log out of things because I have multiple accounts for
yeah,
just one software. And sometimes when they're credit based like this, it's beneficial to have multiple accounts.
awesome. So, on the topic of rent, as the investor and the landlord property owner, your rent is paying for your mortgage, your maintenance fees, landlord fees if you're using a landlord. So, my question is with that, what expenses do beginners underestimate that are going to either cost them the most or are something that is unexpected that they aren't really accounting for? Quick aside, if you're getting value out of this, make sure to hit the like, subscribe, and drop a comment down below with what you want Keith and me to cover next. It helps the channel out a lot, and it tells us what you want to learn about. Anyways, back to the video.
Side 10% for management because I can't even say that. There's just so many people who self-manage their houses because they're like, oh, it's right there. Why in the world am I going to give up $180,
Yeah.
to this guy who's going to manage the property and get one phone call every 6 months? Well, simply put, it's because my peace of mind is worth more than $180. That's how I see it. I don't want to get called when stupid stuff happens. I want to get called when good things happen, My property management company, quite literally the day after Christmas, received a work order. Hey, it's leaking. There's water flooding in the basement right now. Can you send somebody out here? I'm in Georgia hanging out with my family. We were shooting guns. And I had no idea. The next day, my property manager, he sent me a text message. He said, hey, I have something urgent to report. Do you have 5 minutes? I said, sure thing. And he said, yeah. So we received a call yesterday around 1 o'clock that this occurred. We sent out a plumber, and this is what we found wrong. This is what we did as a temporary fix. And then we have, the full fix is coming out. Well, it was less than a 5-minute phone call. He was just briefing me on what happened. Could it have been an email or a text message? Sure, but he likes to talk, and so do I. So I appreciated that only 4 minutes of my time was taken up. I didn't have to make any decisions. I didn't have to swipe my credit card. I didn't have to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
He, with boots on the ground, and I live in Florida and this house is in New York, he there with boots on the ground and established relationships with contractors and plumbers was able to get somebody out there very quickly. And it was his staff that took care of the entire thing, not me. And because I've been setting money aside every single month, I have thousands of dollars in a savings account specifically for this property that I'm able to just easily swipe my credit, not literally, but put in my credit card digits and then pay off the credit card in full for everything that happens that day. A lot of times people are not going to save money for the maintenance and repairs. And that's really what eats at you. If you have a brand new house, and I would define brand new as like 8 years or less. If you have a brand new house,
Okay.
you don't need to be setting aside 10% for maintenance and repairs. You can set aside 5%. And capital expenditures, you can set aside 2 or 3% rather than 5%. So based on the condition of the home and when it has been most recently, renovated, you're gonna need to change these numbers slightly. However, there's a lot of stuff that goes bad around year 10, year 15, year 20. You think about it. What goes bad year 10? All your appliances. Washer, dryer, dishwasher, fridge, freezer, disposal, HVAC, water heater. These things kind of very often go out at the 10-year mark. What goes
Yep.
out at the 15-year mark? Anything that didn't go out at the 10-year mark is what goes out at the 15-year mark because you got a good fridge or you got a good HVAC or you got good windows or
Yep.
whatever it is, right?
I'm thinking
What goes
like
out?
lines and stuff, like the
No.
pipeline, something connected to the washers.
That's the, did you say lines or blinds?
No, the lines, not blinds.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean,
Like the water
things,
lines or the sewer lines, something like that.
yeah, things go bad. And you have to, ironically enough, while we were in Georgia, my
Hmm.
family had a water leak. And it's a newer house. I think it was built in maybe like the early teens. I think it was like 2011, 2012, something like
Oh,
that is
okay.
when it was built. So it's definitely a newer house. But in the bathroom that where we were staying in the in-law suite, the bathroom
Hmm.
that was attached to our bedroom started leaking. And we noticed it. And the floor, the wood was all, kind of warped. And I was like, man, it wasn't like that just a couple of days ago. What had happened was they had a pipe, the pipe that fed hot water to the shower. The cold water was properly L bracketed, meaning it went like this, and there was a bracket, so it was a straight pipe to a straight pipe. But for
Okay.
whatever godforsaken reason, they decided I'm gonna bend the hose, the copper pipe. I'm gonna bend the pipe.
Oh
I,
no.
I don't know why they did that. And so like when
Oh,
you bend a pipe and it creates those two little pointy spots, right? No big
I know
deal
exactly.
at the time, and it lasted 15 years nearly. But while we were there, it broke and it was squirting the wall. We couldn't tell the wall wasn't wet, but then it was running down the wall. It's just a tiny little thing, right? But that's just
Hmm.
an example of like, man, metal little bend creates a weak point. It'll last for a while, but when that happens, you have to take care of it. So they had a plumber over, and we had to stop using the bathroom for a couple days. It's no worries. They have 4 bathrooms in their house. Um, anyway, people don't set money aside for maintenance and repairs and capital expenditures. The only thing that I see people put money aside for, maybe, is management and potentially vacancy. That is irresponsible. You're going to have to take care of these small things. It's typically going to be plumbing things. Plumbing doesn't last as long as electrical. And what I mean by electrical is like the wall outlets. What I'm not
Yeah.
talking about is like a fridge or a stove, like a range, that electric range, that's going to go out like super fast, right?
Hmm.
So appliances go out first. That's kind of going to be your first thing. And then plumbing things start to come up. And then outside things start to come up, like the siding may need to get redone. Termites is a thing. Dry rot is a thing. Wind and hail, like storms, is a thing. Your roof, right? The shingles of your roof, that's only going to last 15, 20. I mean, God has his hand of grace on you if it gets to 30 years, right? Typically,
Yeah.
you're going to be around 20 to 25 years. Some of those things are covered by insurance, of course, but HVAC is not. Plumbing issues not. Toilet leak is not. A fridge is not. Those things cost money.
What does cash on cash mean in plain English?
How much money did you put in? How much money are you getting out? Truthfully, I don't even track cash on cash.
Really?
I'm a little bit of an anomaly because I don't track cash on cash. Cash on cash return is actually a really common uh, metric to see how good the investment is, but it is and has never been applicable to me because I have no money in the deal. Literally, every deal that I've ever done the last 9.5 years, the most money I have ever had is $1. I swear, like I promise, the most money I have ever put into a property is $1 of earnest money deposit. Everything else has been borrowed by a hard money lender, by a private money lender, or by a DSCR lender. And so, or by a seller, like owner financing.
Okay.
And so I don't really care about cash on cash return. And I decided to delete it from my deal analyzer because it shows these monstrous, like you made 144,685% return cash on cash. I don't freaking care, right? Like, what's my cash flow? How much cash did I put in the bank? What is my cash flow? And what is my cash later? How much equity do I have? And like, that's what I care about. I care about my net operating income. I care about my net cash flow. I maybe care about my cap rate, and I care about my DSCR. I care about my loan to value. I think that's it. Those are the only things that I care about. Okay. Not cash on cash, because I have no cash in the deal.
And that answered kind of the second part of the question I asked, or was going to ask, and that was, when is cash on cash misleading for a lot of people, or you specifically? But you pretty much answered it there.
When you don't have any of your own money in the deal, or a dollar. Very misleading.
All right. I got one last question for you. And I saved the best for last.
All right.
What is your minimal deal standard for closing a deal? What is your minimum?
What is the
exit strategy? Is this something that you could... Pardon?
What is the exit strategy? Still talking about rentals?
Yeah, we're going to talk about rentals, and that'll be your exit strategy, just rental. Okay.
So I look at, I have a very unconventional way of looking at this, but I believe it to be a wise way of looking at this, because it is principled in nature and it's also dynamic. Some people would say, "Oh, I need to make $200 per month cash flow." Okay, I'll challenge that. What if you could get into the deal with no money? Okay, but hold on, I would push this person. Like, are you sure you wouldn't take $1? Like, if it was $1.99, I would get down to their absolute bottom dollar. Let's say they started at like $500, then got them to $300, and I'm like, would you go even $1 less? So if it was $2.99, you would say no. No, I'd probably do $2.99. Okay, what is your absolute bottom dollar? And they said $200. And I said, okay, well, I'll challenge it. If $1 lower, $1.99, you're going to say no. Yeah, I'm saying no. Okay, cool. So 200 is the absolute bottom dollar. Check this out. If you could get the house for $100, you're no money in. You don't need to raise money. It's not going to take a long time. Lipstick on a pig type of renovation. Like $3,000 renovation. You only need $100 to get into the deal. The seller will finance everything else. You have to pay for closing costs, and that's it. Let's say closing costs is going to run you. Let's say closing costs plus the $100 is $1,000.
Okay.
Are you going to take? And you're 30 cents on the dollar. You're buying it for $30,000, and it's worth $100,000 as it sits. So you have $70,000 of equity. But the problem is your payments to the seller are kind of high, right? Because they're selling it to you at a really great price. They're selling it to you 0% interest, only $100 down, right? So you had to give a little bit. And where you gave was the monthly payment. It's in great condition. It's in a great area, super solid rents. You have $70,000 of equity. You only need to come out of pocket $1,000 to take down this house, which of course I'm going to borrow from a friend and not even have I like being able to say that I've only put in $1 in. So I have to, on a principal basis. At this point, I've been saying this for nearly a decade. But it only cash flows $150 per month. And this is, of course, after you set aside money for your capital expenditures and your maintenance and your repairs and your management and everything like this. It only cash flows $150. You're telling me you'd say no to it? that person is probably going to go, oh, well, because of X, Y, and Z, I would say yes to this one. This is an unprincipled person. I don't like making decisions that are not principled in nature. And so I look at these, and I've actually already stated the things that I'm looking at. I don't have this is the minimum cash flow, because I look at every deal with 3 factors in mind. People should write this down. How much will I make? How long will it take? And how much do I have to raise? How much will I make? How long will it take? And how much do I need to raise? So let me give you an example. This is also how I determine different exit strategies. So if I were to, let's just compare a wholesale versus a retail, like full, I'm going to go to the 9s and just make this a beautiful house, or wholesale it and not have to do anything.
Okay.
How much will I make? I'm going to make $20,000 on the assignment. It's going to take me 2 weeks, and I need to raise no money because, of course, it's a wholesale. So $20,000, 2 weeks, and I don't need to raise any money. Or I can do the full retail flip, and I'm going to make $60,000. It's going to take 6 months, and I need to raise $200,000.
Okay.
If we were to take out the how long will it take and how much do I need to raise, and you were to just look at, well, I'm going to make $20,000 if I do this one, and I'm going to make $60,000 if I do this one. Which one sounds better? This one does, of course. However, once we bring in the element of time, so these are the 3 universal currencies of life, which is time, money, and energy.
Yeah.
We should always, there's only 3, there's not 2 and there's not 4. There's 3 universal laws of currency: time, money, and energy. And money should be split into time as well. Like cash now, how I personally do it is cash now, cash flow, cash later. So how much will I make is separated. Cash now, cash flow, cash later. Then the second question is, how long will it take? The third question is, how much do I need to raise? So looking at these 2 different scenarios, am I going to wholesale this one for $20,000 in 2 weeks and I don't need to raise anything, or am I going to flip this one, make $60,000 after 6 months and I have to raise $200,000? I'm going to wholesale this one all day, every day, because this is effectively $40,000 per month. If it takes me 2 weeks to make $20,000, this is $40,000 per month. This one, $60,000 over 6 months. This one is an effective rate of $10,000 per month. And I have $200,000 at risk.
Okay.
So we should always look at it this way. And then there's also, when it comes to risk, is what is my leverage, right? What is my loan to value? What is it worth and how much am I leveraging? If I'm at a loan to value of, I don't like going over 55%. This is extremely, I'm very good at negotiating both price and terms. Most people cannot do that. Like a lot of people are buying houses at 65, 70, 75, and even 80% loan to value. So I look at how much equity do I have in the house, because equity is going to deleverage. Deleverage is de-risk. More leverage equals more risk. The second thing that I'm going to look at is the ease of everything. Like, am I going to have to raise a whole bunch of money? Am I going to have to manage contractors and change orders and create a scope of work and blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So looking at the rental this way is also super healthy. And people should always ask themselves, how much will I make? How long will it take? And how much do I have to raise? You should also be mindful of, what is your loan to value?
Dude, You've been awesome. That's all I have.
Thanks for the questions, dude.
Today.
Those are solid questions.
Awesome. I like to hear it. Now, and that's all I have for today. So we will see you all on the next one. Later.
Alrighty, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Real estate isn't magic. It's a skill. And the people who win long term are the ones that keep stacking the reps. That means learning, analyzing, staying patient, and making good decisions. If you want to keep building that skill with us, make sure to subscribe and send this to someone who needs to hear it, because I know you know someone that needs to. Anyways, that's all for today. Take care.